Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Dan the Movie Man with another big show for you today. Happy New Year. And Paul and I here got a chance to see Star Wars The Last Jedi. What better way to start the new year with the recent Star Wars movie and to have basically my time-to-time co-host review it with me. And so the plot of this movie here is that Rey finds Luke Skywalker, wants to train with him while the Resistance flees away from the First Order. That's basically, I could say without spoiling too much, but we are going to get into spoilers very soon. So here is our review on this recent Star Wars film. Do you mind if I go first?
Why don't you start off positive, because we're going to kind of go off a bit.
So I personally love this movie. It's not the best Star Wars movie. I consider Empire to be the first one, and it does less of repeat than it does more with rhyme. It manages to be its own type of thing without being, because when I went into this, I was afraid that it was going to be a retread of Empire. And while there are still elements of that, it manages to be a story of its own. What Rian Johnson does with this movie is that he doesn't necessarily want to change sci-fi, but he tries to turn it a little bit on its head so that it's more character-based than it is on what the subtext is. And he's done that with Looper, and he's done that in the past with films like Brick and even The Brothers Bloom, which are films that I absolutely love. And it goes to show with this film that there isn't always a light and dark side, but sometimes a gray area in the balance, and that it does a great setup for what the future holds, that everything should not always stick to the status quo, and it always makes me look forward to seeing what the future holds for Star Wars. Now, Paul, you had a very different opinion.
I pretty much disagree with just about everything that you
In the words of Luke Skywalker, everything you
just said is wrong.
No, but this is good. I like different opinions. You get a different view on the film. But let me know what you thought.
All right, look, I'm going to be honest with a few known points here. I do not hate this movie.
Right.
I hate that it was allowed to happen this way. I do not like the film. I consider it a mediocre Star Wars movie. It's the best way to put it. Essentially, it's an entertaining film.
Oh, yeah. You're definitely not going to forget it.
Yeah, but I don't think for any of the right reasons. Look, it's an entertaining movie on first viewing, and I did like it the first night I saw it, but I had lingering issues. And then I saw it again the next night, and everything that I had issue with got worse. And when I got home and I think more about the film, and I mean this over the last 2 weeks, especially discussing the film with not just you, but other people, my friends, the film does not stand up well story-wise. It has plot holes galore. Okay, I'm going to start off with what I like positively about the film.
Sure.
With all the issues that I had, granted, it could have had more context. I enjoyed what they did with Luke Skywalker.
I would easily say that this is Mark Hamill's best performance in a long time.
Mark Hamill does extremely well with the material he's given.
I mean, he's done good voice stuff, but this is a great time where we get to see him, act.
Exactly. The thing is that he obviously had issue with this take on the character. That's pretty well documented. But I think he does a very good job in doing his best with what he remembers about the character and moving forward. I like a lot of the stuff about Luke Skywalker talking about how the Jedi essentially were not great. They allowed the Sith to rise and all this different stuff, and it kind of takes issue with what happens in the prequels. So it kind of wraps itself in and it works. That I liked. But again, most of the movie while I'm watching this, I'm seeing it as sort of a redemption arc for Luke. And in a way it is. And then the ending happens, and
just so you know, we are going to get into spoiler
we're going to go into
so
full-on spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, if you haven't seen it yet, just get out now. But okay, so at the very end, after this extremely crazy display of power of the Force, Luke just ends up dying on his island, surrounded by no one. And I mean, it's assumed that he's dead. He vanishes and goes assuming into the Force like Obi-Wan did.
Mm-hmm. I would say the reason why this happens, not just because he becomes one and has found peace, but because he used basically an astral projection, which is basically like using all of his power that could probably
all right,
kill him.
but see,
and
that's
why no
what
one
I'm
has done
talking
it.
about. That's what I'm talking about. I don't think Rian Johnson had anyone look over the script. I don't think he went in and read it himself, because the film does all of these things and then ends up making itself pointless. That's kind of every scene in this movie, or every arc. That's essentially what happens. So if your whole point was to have Luke die or become a Force ghost or go into the Force, whatever happens to him at the end there, it looks like he dies.
He probably will in episode 9.
Look, if your whole point was to have that happen, the whole point of having him astral project onto another planet and then die. Why couldn't he have physically shown? I'm saying just from a storytelling, like writing it down, like making a script. Why not just have Luke have gone to the planet and been killed by Kylo Ren in a self-sacrifice? That would
How
have
would he
been.
get there?
Look, buddy, I'm not talking about the way that the movie is done. I'm talking about a guy writing a movie at home. Your goal writing the story is to have him die at the end of the movie.
I will say one thing that I do like what they did. Some people say that it changed a lot. Some people say that it didn't change a lot.
See, that's the thing, though. Nothing changes.
Well, there is how the Force evolves. Because there are aspects in the film that they use the Force, but for completely different reasons. For example, there is a scene where Leia, her ship blows up, and are you okay?
I'm sorry, man.
Is it that scene?
It's that. Okay, so the scene we're
happens
talking about is that
and
Kylo Ren.
It is kind of distracting because this is Carrie Fisher's final film, and this was a death that really hit us hard.
Look, Carrie Fisher does a great job with what she's given.
Amazing, and
she's fine, and she's even better than she was on The Force Awakens. However, she's got nothing to do in this movie. She has nothing to do, and when she does do something, it's completely weird. All right.
What she does, what happens is that you see her fingers move, and at some point, I thought it was going to be her connecting with
All right,
Luke.
I'm gonna fully explain this. She gets blasted out of a ship.
Yes.
Right, and with all the other admirals who also just completely vanish, Admiral Akbar among them. She goes out.
Rest in peace.
And everyone just assumed like, okay, this is how Carrie Fisher is going to die.
I honest to God thought that that's what they were
going to do, and I was like, okay, this is not how I would have that's not how I would have done it, but it is what it is. We understand that Carrie Fisher is no longer alive. That's what they have to do. But then they go to her in space, and she force pushes herself back into the ship, and it looks completely ridiculous. I mean, look, I understand.
Well, people sometimes thought she was flying. Like, no, she's just pulling herself.
I understand what
towards the
she's
ship.
doing. I understand what's going on in the scene, but it looks completely ridiculous. The execution on it was done terribly.
It does.
It looks awful. And even the first time I watched the movie, my friend Ben next to me literally went like this. Like, because he couldn't believe he was watching this.
You would expect that Harrison Ford would be right next to you and go, "That's not how the Force works."
But that's
like,
look.
but how?
They don't even explain the context, because they've made a clear point in Force Awakens that she essentially hasn't abandoned the Force, but she's left it to go to the side essentially while she pursued her political and military career in helping out the rebels and resistance.
All right.
So there's nothing for her. If she had said a line like that was something that Luke taught me, I could have accepted it more. But they don't even do that. There's a whole slew, and then she's in a coma for the rest of the movie essentially.
I think that's
While
how
Poe has to
was
deal with-
originally filmed, because I don't think that they
I
wanted
don't-
to take that out. And I think that she was supposed to have a bigger role in Episode 9 before her unfortunate passing, but I don't think that they wanted to tinker with it at the last minute. But I will say that, like I said, I don't think that the film is perfect, but there are two things about it that I did not like myself.
Okay.
First of all, I thought that the casino scene,
The whole casino
that
storyline.
whole casino scene, it just felt like not necessarily bad. It just felt really distracting to the point where it felt like it was its own separate short film.
It could, that's literally what it felt like.
And
But here, I want to make a point.
Not offensively bad. Just really distracting.
Really distracting, does not forward the plot really any. And I understand the point because at the end of the film, it goes back to the planet, and you see that one of the kids can use the Force. And that's it.
Just shows
At
that
no point,
anyone
at
can
no
be Force
point,
sensitive.
at no point do they make a point. Do they make a point that this kid, or do they show Finn or Rose seeing the kid use the Force? So that's completely useless. Rose makes a point. I'm sorry, this new character Rose,
Yes.
who's also completely useless and doesn't really do much.
Like I said, not offensively bad, just sort of random and out of left field.
She makes a point that this is a casino planet where more warmongers basically go, that they live out, spending their money or whatever. And anyway, they have slave children on the planet, and they have these like slave racing horses,
Horse dogs.
horse dog things. And no, hold on, I'm going to finish my point. So they make a point that they don't like this place, and so Rose and Finn, even though it doesn't really help the plot whatsoever, they take the horses and they release them, and they have them go through the casino to then hurt the bad guys. They don't do anything to save the slave children whatsoever, and from what they've already established in the scene, even the stuff that they do doesn't mean anything.
Well,
No, it doesn't mean anything because the warmongers are going to build that casino in like a week. And they've already on their way to catching the animals, which they then released. The slave children are only going to get beaten up more for having released the animals in the first place.
Not until that kid starts using the Force on them.
But see, this is the thing though, like, they do these things, the whole film talks about these messages, and it doesn't really do anything new or interesting.
Well, for a Star Wars film to do that, I really wouldn't expect it. But
Buddy, it has no point. There's no point to it. That's most of this movie.
Like I said, yeah, I wasn't a fan. There's one character I'm not a fan of, and that is a new character named Admiral Holdo, played by Laura Dern.
All right, can we agree on that?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason why I'm not a fan of her is because she comes off as like a strict mother that you're not supposed. Because Poe, who by the way is given so much more to do in the movie before then. You see him as this new character, and he's very likable. And
he's just a pilot,
I
though.
want to know more about him. And he is given more to do. And with his interactions with Holdo, it's like, all right, we have to be able to do this. And she's basically that person like, I understand your frustration. I'm like, oh my God, this woman. But she does redeem herself. There's one great scene where she just flies into the First Order ship, and then it just goes in silence. Like the visual for that, it's magnificent.
Okay.
People in the theater were like, "Whoa!"
All right. So I'm gonna say yes, it was a cool scene.
Yes.
But I'm also gonna destroy everything that you just said again. No. I agree with Holdo. So when I bring this point up to people, when I bring it up the fact that Holdo really doesn't do anything except for being a hurdle for Poe. Or she doesn't tell him any plans whatsoever. And some of my friends have said, well, hey man, like Poe just showed that he's completely irresponsible. She has no reason to want to tell him anything. And I'm like, look, first off.
There's a time and place.
There is a time and place. They're constricted. They're already having issue getting enough help as it is. And he's a hothead pilot who's been known to try and get things done if he's not in the loop or he doesn't think that things are getting done.
Right.
And if Holdo doesn't know this, she should know it by now. And in any movie or play where it's done well, there's no scene of them talking it out. There's no scene of Holdo and Poe discussing their viewpoints and how she sees him or how he sees her. There's no point where Holdo goes off or explains to someone else why she's not going to tell Poe this plan, which you then find out later, being the audience. See, even in Shakespeare, if someone doesn't want to have something happen and it causes a further tragedy to happen, even then, Shakespeare took time for the character to explain to the audience, or at least give reason as to why something was not going to be explained or told to another character. And they don't even do that in this movie. So Holdo is made completely useless.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Now, stuff that I really enjoyed myself, I don't know if anyone would agree. There was always a build-up to Rey's parents, and people were wondering, well, who are they? And there's this one scene where she's in this hole where the island is that Luke is, and it's like a reflection of her ever unending reflection. It's like, who are my parents? And you see two figures, and it's just her. Now, the first thought that came to my head was, is she a clone?
Or,
Yeah,
well, I'm
or
not saying
is
clone.
she
I
made from
I
the
was
Force?
assuming that she was another Anakin.
Yes.
But again, they don't go into this.
But like later on, when she's facing off with Kylo, and he tells her, "Oh, you're nothing." Now, to some people, that's going to be a little frustrating to that kind of buildup. But for me, I was like, thank God that there isn't a connection, because sometimes a character isn't interesting or fascinating because of who their bloodline is. Like, it's not about where she comes from, it's who she is and how she starts it, that she is basically the symbol of a new generation. And I do like that Star Wars is, because the universe is a huge, this galaxy is massive, and you can't just restrict it to this, because even Kylo says, let the past die, bury it. And I think that's basically a wake-up call for anyone who is still stuck with that past, and just embrace the new and still keep a sense of familiarity with it. That's the thing I like.
I'm sorry, man. Look, I mean, it's one thing that Kylo's saying it, so he's the bad guy, so maybe it's a red herring.
Not because she even believes it. She can see it too. He's telling the truth.
I want to go back. Oh, I want to finish the other point too about that the starship going into the other starships. While that's a great scene, it also adds a huge plot hole to the rest of Star Wars now. Because now you're thinking, well, why don't they just do that in every battle? Granted, the ships
killed herself.
No, I know, and the ships are kind of limited. I get
that's
that.
why
but why didn't the ships do that with the Death Star? Did the Death Star have a shield? It raises further questions, and that's what the movie does as well too. So on the Rey's parents being nobody. Now, a lot of the Jedi stuff can be sort of either salvaged or course corrected in 9, depending on what they want to do and what they've revealed and what they haven't revealed. But again, Rey's parentage raises more questions than answers. And this is a film you should be answering some of these things. Like, you don't have to have everything answered. You have to leave some stuff for 9. I understand that.
The way how I see it is that this is not meant to be like Empire. I see this more as the Two Towers, which goes to show, if this is going to be Two Towers and the one before then is Fellowship, will that mean that Episode 9 is going to be amazing?
It's going to be a 3.5-hour movie?
I hope so.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, they knew that it was going to be a long movie.
Yeah.
They knew that nothing happened between 1 and 2, essentially. Two Towers was mostly about battle stuff. But here's my thing. Going back to Rey's parentage, even in saying that they're doing something different or they're doing something new, it raises more questions. For instance, Rey is essentially nobody, right? Or that's what they're saying?
Exactly.
Right. So what is she? Is she a new Anakin? Never explained. They say that Rey is essentially was made by. It's assumed that she was made by the Force to be a counterpoint to Kylo because Luke cut himself off from the Force.
Right.
Okay. So where is the counterpoint to Snoke?
That's another thing. Like when they brought in Snoke, which I will say, Snoke looks way better in this.
Okay.
Except for the Hugh Hefner part.
No. Here's the thing.
Gold robe.
So Snoke is completely wasted.
He is.
Before even the Rey revelation, I want to show you that scene. You have a scene where Rey has gone to Kylo to try and turn him, but Kylo instead brings her to Snoke. Mm-hmm. And again, we're like fast forwarding to the Return of the Jedi ending. So it's like, okay, but these are new characters. You're thinking, okay, anything could happen here. Rey could go to the dark. Kylo could go to the light. Maybe they both face Snoke. Maybe one of them dies. What ends up happening?
What ends up happening is that Snoke he's excited to see what is going to happen, and all of a sudden, Kylo turns the lightsaber and essentially stabs him through, and then he just comes apart. And that's going to infuriate some people, a lot of people, because they were wondering, who was this guy?
That's what I said, but it's not even that, dude. It's the fact that even the setup is done terribly. Like, it's
But you
done,
also, I
no,
actually,
no, no. It's done terribly in the fact that he's saying, like,
No, I wasn't
Kylo
gonna
Ren
get
will
to
never
that.
betray me. Oh my God, he betrayed me as the lightsaber goes through him.
So the
ca-
thing I was getting to was I noticed that after a second viewing, aside from Rogue One, this is the first Star Wars movie that doesn't have a lightsaber on lightsaber duel.
Well, not counting the stuff in the Snoke chamber, but yeah, one on. It's
Yeah,
more
like,
of like
where they're against each other, they're
fighting.
helping out with each other.
Look,
Like, that's an interesting thing to point out.
I guess, but it doesn't make me like the movie more because of it. Here's another thing. Snoke has now died,
Yes.
and
now Kylo
no.
is the supreme leader.
see, but that's what I'm talking about. Nothing really changes except rank. Kylo doesn't then go to join Rey, and then the rest of the First Order there is trying to scramble, and that's what they have to face in the next one. Or Rey doesn't become evil with him, and then they're both on the side of evil, and then the new Resistance has to then fight them to make it interesting. No, instead he just becomes the new bad guy, and then Rey leaves and goes and joins.
But he's still
the Resistance.
conflicted, and which still,
Is he though?
yeah.
Is he
'cause
really that conflicted?
in a sense, because
Dude, look, he didn't murder his mom. Congratulations.
No.
Congratulations, you
It's
didn't
like,
murder your
you
mom.
are not a 100% piece of crap.
He still wanted to murder Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
He's still the supreme leader. Like, I don't see that much conflict anymore. Like,
Well, not anymore,
It's more of
because
like,
he's sort of-
haha, I got you, Rey,
Yeah.
but I'm really a bad guy. And it's nothing. The movie does all of these setups and all of these scenes to make you think that something big and provocative is going to happen, and then nothing ends up really happening.
I just want to point out like two other scenes that I do like, just for the sake of
Yeah,
them.
no.
There's one moment where Luke is out on the field and Kylo's about to go down, and General Hux Weasley is in there just being like, "You are not going." Wow, man! And you just see the guy like, right away, sir. I just love how.
No. Okay,
I
so
love how human these soldiers are. That they're not generic robots.
No.
Actually,
So-
he's like,
so there
I
is-
am dying today.
So the humor is really mixed for me because there's some of it that's very Marvel-esque and it is like, it's almost forced humor and I don't like that. But there is some humor that works in the film fine. But the fact that the movie opened with a your mother joke essentially from Poe to Hux, it kind of ruins any of the tension built up by the rest of the scene.
Or the cell phone thing, like, I can't hear you. But then again, that's happened in other movies before.
But it's not Star Wars. I don't need Marvel type humor in a Star Wars movie. Like,
then again, they both are owned by Disney.
I understand that, but you know what? Like, it's forced. It's forced, and some of the
I
humor.
see what
some-
you did there.
Yeah. But no, man. Like, it's too much. Hold on, we lost track here a second.
The other scene that I wanted to point out that I think is probably one of the best scenes, Yoda.
Okay.
Yoda, when you see the back of his head, I was in my seat just going, please be a puppet, please be a puppet, please be a puppet.
And he was.
And he is.
It's weird though too because the CGI, surrounding the glow makes him look a little bit weird. But he is still a puppet, and I like that. And the Yoda scene, I have no complaints about, apart from the fact that Force Ghost can now use lightning, which is
they
odd.
did say, when you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Well, this was proven. And I'm like, if that's the case, if, again, comparing to Lord of the Rings, can the next one just be a whole bunch of Force Ghosts on their side like what they did in Return of the
Here's the thing though. The only people who have achieved Force Ghostum, from what I can tell, is Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Yoda, and I think that's it.
For now.
Oh, and Luke possibly.
Possibly Luke.
So you've got 5 Jedi ghosts.
Yeah. As far as we know, because there's probably more out there, but they could. I do like that they have that moment. They're just sitting down, just looking at this burning tree, just on fire.
No,
just
that's an
having a
okay
moment.
scene. Again, like I said, most of the Luke stuff, with the exception of needing more context.
And I miss that Yoda, like just that funny, lovable Yoda, instead of like this strict one that doesn't have any personality.
You know what's interesting about that though is that if you go back and watch Empire, he's only goofy when he's trying to trick Luke.
Yeah.
And then he becomes more strict and stern when he becomes the
Because
actual
he
teacher.
says, I'm looking for a Jedi master, But you got to think he's basically like, who's this kid on my world? And
see, this is the other thing too, is that people are criticizing. People are having issue with what Luke did, right? And that he ran away. And I understood that, but then like, oh, well, Obi-Wan and Yoda also ran away, so why are you having issue with that? I'm like, well, no, there's a difference. See, Luke, or from what we can tell, Luke literally abandoned everybody. He went off and did his own thing. Mm-hmm. But Obi-Wan and Yoda, they both, by the end of the original trilogy, that they were both aware of the Skywalker twins, essentially. So really, Obi-Wan literally just watched over Luke for 18 years. Yoda waited basically to train one of them at some point, or to see how they were going to turn out, and then that's why he's conflicted about Luke, because he's not sure if Luke's going to become another Vader. Go
ahead.
What I'm saying is that they did not necessarily run away. They went into exile essentially, but they did it in a sense of where they wanted to build something that would then take out the Empire at a later point. Luke doesn't do that. Luke is just completely gone from everybody else. And that's the problem. The film, instead of giving more context to Luke's backstory, so something that he can tell Rey to further make strong arguments for all the stuff that he puts out there, which most of it, which I liked. Like, instead of this whole Casino Planet crap that they do, just focus on what Luke and Rey were going to do. Like, it would have been more interesting.
The Luke and Rey stuff is the most interesting part.
It is.
And I will say
and they don't concentrate on it. They concentrate on Poe having issues with this purple-haired lady, Holdo, and Finn doing a Miyazaki adventure on a planet that we don't care
Rian
about.
Johnson is very much inspired by anime with his films, and I think that was something with The Force Awakens. But one thing I want to say about the exile thing, the difference is Luke is responsible. Obi-Wan and Yoda, they were involved, but they were not the cause of the fall. Luke was basically saying, because of my irresponsible actions, I failed myself, I failed my nephew, I failed the rest of the Jedi, and I do not want to be a part of this.
And that works as a great redemption arc. And the whole, everything, up until everything with the sunset and him seeing the two suns, signified to me in the audience, oh my God, he tricked Kylo Ren, he did the ultimate Jedi Master move, he's seeing the two suns, he's come back full circle, and he's become Luke Skywalker again. Great. He's found himself again. And then he dies.
Probably because, anyway, that we
I understand why he
that.
dies, but it's still dumb. And that's the thing. I don't care about Force Ghost Luke in the next movie. I'll be glad to see Mark Hamill come back, but it's not going to be the same as seeing Luke help the Resistance and help them take on the First Order. And I'm sorry, they make a point that Leia sends out a distress call and no one responds to her. And not only that, it's a distress call that is Leia's code. Everyone who gets the distress call knows that it's Leia, and no one comes because they're too afraid or whatever. So what is to make me believe that anyone is going to help Rey and the rest of these no-names that no one knows about in the next thing, unless it's going to jump like 10 years ahead of time when they've gone around and started making names for themselves.
That's the thing. I don't know what to expect.
But still, like, if you had told me that Luke Skywalker lived at the end of 8, that would have made me more excited, because if all you had to do was say, Rey, go to Leia and say, we're going to go get Luke. Because then, if I'm this guy in the galaxy that doesn't want to support the Resistance, but also doesn't want to go against the First Order, if I heard that Luke Skywalker had returned basically from the dead or from exile and had joined the Resistance, boom, you've got an instant army. Like, that is more easy to do. That is a fundamentally better story than what we got in Episode 8. Everything about Force, and this is the thing, I liked Force Awakens. I understood that it had to be a soft reboot. I understood that it was going to be probably somewhat of a retread. But you know what? It made me care about the new characters. It made me excited for Star Wars again. And then Rogue One even worked on working on some of the more, nostalgia-based things, like everything with Vader, making us remember why we love Star Wars. 8 doesn't do any of that. It killed all of the plot points from 7 that I was interested in. I don't care about the characters anymore because they don't do anything. Rey, I feel, is almost just as confused as she was at the beginning of the movie when she is at the end of the movie. I mean, she doesn't get really real answers, and even the ones that she does, it's just like, oh, okay, I guess that's it. But they don't.
That's fair enough. Aside from that, I think we got it all out. We went through a review without trying to kill each other.
No.
Now for the final verdict, why don't you give your? Actually, I'll give my final verdict. I'm going to give the movie an A. Like I said, it's not the best Star Wars movie. I think Force Awakens is a better film with better pacing, but I do think that it was trying something new that I am looking forward to in the future. That is my final verdict. Paul, your final verdict?
I'd give it a C- to a D+.
Okay.
I think it's a 6 out of 10 at best.
That's fair.
But on this note too, I want to make a point because everyone keeps talking about Rotten Tomatoes, and
Yeah, at this point, it doesn't really matter anymore.
it does though. See, here's the thing, and this was debunked by the way. It's not trolls going crazy on the user ratings, like Rotten Tomatoes debunked that. And on top of that, the rating hasn't gone up. It just keeps going down. It's up to 50%. Metacritic has a 4.6 out of 10 on the user ratings. And currently on IMDb, it's at 7.6 out of 10, which may not be that bad, but in comparison, that's the same.
Isn't Metacritic in the green though? I thought it was 86 last I checked today.
No. That's the critic rating. The user rating at Metacritic is
Okay.
4.6 out of 10.
So yeah, it's a mixed film, but it's worth checking out.
Worth checking out and then getting extremely disappointed in. The 7.6 on IMDb is the same grade as Revenge of the Sith, and most likely the grade is only going to keep going down further. In comparison, The Force Awakens opened at like 9.3 and stayed on the top 250 list of IMDb for like the next 2 years until Episode 8 came out and then knocked it out because Episode 7 is now completely pointless because of this film. Again, I'm just saying I don't think fans are on board with this film. I mean, the movie's obviously doing pretty good box office wise. You can't argue that. I mean, it's not going to make anywhere near what Force Awakens made, but fans are not on board. I saw this film twice, and again the second time because I had to make sure that what I was seeing was what I was seeing. And I don't want to go see it again. I saw Force Awakens 7 times in theaters. I'm pretty sure I saw Rogue One at least 3 or 4 times. I don't want to see this movie again. The only time I'm ever going to watch it is probably if like my roommate buys it and we watch it before we go see Episode 9. I have no desire to see this film again.
I think that pretty much gives the basic idea of, so we got the positive side, the negative side. You be your own judge. Let us know what you think of this. I think this is probably one of the most interesting episodes that I've had. It definitely brought a lot to think about. Paul, I want to thank you for being onto the show.
Thank you, man.
And I know that, we may have different opinions, but, we will still be friends about this. And I want to thank you all for still viewing this. I know it's been since April that I've reviewed a movie, but, I'm back. I'm going to try new things, including still news stuff, look backs on certain actors, fan castings, and more reviews to come. Until then, I'm Dan the Movie Man.
I'm Paul.
And this is us signing out.